Good morning and welcome to Nordic Northwest Town Hall meeting. I want to thank you for your time today and thank you for being members of Nordic Northwest. Some of you here today have been members for less than a year. There's a handful of members that have been engaged for 15 plus years. So thank you for your interest and your involvement with Nordic Northwest. I'm excited about our upcoming strategic plan. And my role as executive director, I have the pleasure and I have the honor of working with members, donors, volunteers, Nordic organizations, the community, and the general public, and implementing the organization's strategic vision and their plan. And I started about my role at Nordic Northwest about 3 years ago. At that time, the organization did not have a current strategic plan. So what the board did in 2019, shortly after that, they had a board retreat. We set some really short-term strategic objectives. And then it was the board's intent to have me in the role for a year so I got to know the membership and the culture of the organization. And then in the beginning of 2020, the board intentionally began their strategic planning process. And I'll outline today how we're going to spend our time. So the most important thing today is you. Your voice is very important, your input and your feedback, and that's the reason why we're here today. John Nelson will start out and he'll give just a summary of our strategic planning process. Then we'll hear from each of the 5 volunteer task forces, and they'll highlight the task force's recommendations. And the majority of the time that we'll spend today is our 5 breakout sessions, and that's when you'll be able to give your input, ask questions, and your voice will be really, really important. Then we'll gather together as a group at the end for a recap. And I have a pleasure of introducing John Nelson. He's been our volunteer board president since 2020. John is Swedish and Norwegian heritage. He's a retired business owner for an architectural and engineering firm. And John was so instrumental to the Nordic Northwest. He provided construction management oversight when we were building Nordia House. And John has a really important and big role as our volunteer leader. He's responsible for leading the board of the directors and the organization in our strategic vision and our strategic planning process. And the board of directors, one of their most important roles is working collectively as an organization to develop that vision and that strategy. So thank you for your voice today, your interest in shaping the future in Nordic Northwest, and I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you everyone for attending this morning. We were delighted to see that we have, as of yesterday, nearly 90 of you had registered. We hope there are a few walk-ins, so we're just delighted with the turnout, so thank you very much. In the 90 minutes today, we will make efficient use of the time, so you have an opportunity to meet with each of the task force groups and discuss the topics. The strategic plan is strategic, and it's a plan. Oh, so what does that mean? The strategic plan, it's 5 years. It's a 5-year plan. It's not a permanent plan. It's not set in steel and etched in glass. It's intended to be dynamic and malleable as time goes on. But there's a few important points that you see on the board here. The plan is mission-driven. We're a Nordic organization. And our mission statement is articulated on the website, and I think many of us can just memorize it and recite it. But based on the mission of who we are and what we've agreed that we're all about, and our history and the traditions and so forth, the plan is also forward-looking. We're looking to the future. We're not looking to the past. We're looking at what is Nordic Northwest about in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. What steps can we take to improve the services and improve our mission? It looks at big goals. It's not micromanagement. We don't look at the details. We don't look at tactics so much. We look at strategic visions, big, broad goals. It is, as I mentioned, dynamic and flexible. So along the way, The plan gets monitored. We just don't publish a plan, put it on a wall or put it on a bookshelf, watch it collect dust, and then revisit it with new board members, say in 5 years, and say, well, let's start over, let's do something else. It has to be monitored, and so there'll be an opportunity to see how some of the components of the plan are effective going forward. Now, okay, here we go. The task forces were formed after the process started in early 2020. After a board retreat in 2019, we reached agreement that it was time to look at the long-term vision and prepare a strategic plan for the organization. So in early 2020, we got started. Later in that springtime, early summer, we formed the task forces to look at specific components of the plan. It's a big undertaking, so you have to sort of break it apart, look at the constituent pieces, and then address those pieces with effective leadership and engagement of volunteers. Now with that, the work was informed by our history through a comprehensive review of all of our historic documents and how did we get to this point we are in today. We were informed by our members who have also that historical knowledge of the organization, and the membership also helped us drill into what is important, what's valuable, where should we go, what mistakes should we try to overcome in the future. We talked to affiliated organizations, and the task force on collaboration can help you. They'll talk about some of the organizations we spoke to, and then there are, of course, the important stakeholders. Obviously, Broder, Finware, these are examples of stakeholders that have a significant role to play in the success of this organization. Now, we're also influenced by our, so we'll go to the next one. So I've addressed what the plan is, how the process worked, and what we're informed by, but then the plan is influenced by certain things. We're influenced by the property and space that we have today. What can we deal with? What's our canvas? What are our limitations? What are the constraints? Where are the opportunities? We have to look at finances. We're obviously influenced by income and cash flow and the capability of this organization to manage its future in a stable outlook. New technologies. We've learned during this pandemic that we had to be nimble. We had to apply new technologies so we could communicate effectively, and we've learned a great deal about that, and you'll hear from the digital task force about how that component of the strategic plan will help us advance our role in the future, and both in communications and entertainment and events and so forth. And then finally, in volunteer succession and leadership. The energy of this organization is created by you and everyone else in this organization. That's sort of like our fission, or is it fusion, our reactor. It's people. And no committee, no board, no staff is constant forever. There's always turnover. There's always replacement. There's new blood. There's retirement and so forth. So we need to take a hard look at the succession of volunteers, succession of leadership, so that that dynamic leadership and that looking to the future with a hopeful set of eyes continues into the future. So when it's completed, the plan will be adopted by the board of directors sometime, hopefully first quarter of next year. We will be looking at the results of this town hall, today and this evening, at a retreat later in the fall, and then we'll take a look at completing each of the components, put it together, and then hopefully have a draft early in the next year. So at the end of the day, the strategic plan will help Nordic Northwest enrich the lives of its members and the wider community to fulfill its mission. So that's a big undertaking. We're into this for 19 months with your help, the volunteers, the stakeholders, and so forth. So with those comments in mind, you all have a packet, and the packet has a document that addresses the strategic plan, and then it talks about each of the task forces. There are 5. Now, I don't think Not sure the financial, at least I don't have a financial one in here. But you have each of the task forces is located, 2 in here, 1 in exhibit hall, and 1 in MLC room. So at this point, I will turn the microphone over to Peter Loop, our vice president, and he will address the digital task force, and then he'll introduce the next task force. At the end of that, then we'll break up, and then we'll have our task force sessions. Thanks.
Thank you. If you don't know me, I'm Peter Loop. My background is in technology, working for Intel, Microsoft, Infosys, and things like that. I'd like to thank the fellow members of the task force, Katerina, Kim, Roger. Also, staff was heavily involved. We're talking about business systems that operate within Nordic Northwest, and so staff was very important. Whitman, Annetta, and Eric were all critically involved in what we're doing. Just sort of to set the stage, we sort of had a once-in-a-lifetime event with COVID hitting, and we couldn't operate Nordic Northwest. You couldn't come into Nordia House. And the important thing to think about is, can we accomplish our mission without the walls, the physical building, or things like that? That's one of the things that we faced. The other thing is we have a digital divide. I mean, we have the young millennials who are ruled by this device right here, and everybody needs to know what's happening or get their information on their phone or things like that. People want to consume things digitally. But still, understand, the stuff I'm talking about doesn't necessarily mean I get rid of a paper newsletter or anything like that. There's a whole continuum. But we needed to be able to pivot on that as well. So what we were trying to do, get forward, is we want to be able to strengthen Nordic Northwest's mission, the ability to fulfill its mission, both inside and outside the 4 walls of Nordia House. So there's something that we can do. We can advance Nordic culture without everyone coming in here. The other thing is we wanted to provide educational and cultural programming that is consumable online. So you've seen that this meeting, you have cameras. We're going to be videoing it and things like that so people consume it otherwise. We've had concerts that you can listen to. Friday night lectures I can get from my home. We've all gotten used to Zoom on meetings. That's taken technology, cameras, staff knowing what to do and things like that. So we want to be able to provide that programming as well as think about that as we go. And so now you see blended stuff. If you look over here at the wonderful Sammy exhibit, you'll see there's little QR codes in every little corner that provides additional information. We also want to be a service to members and volunteers with efficient processes, consistent user experiences in a safe and secure manner. If you remember just a little while ago, we didn't have a really good way of keeping track of membership, reminding people to re-sign up, and the payment process was not integrated, and it didn't go into the back-end books or things like that. This is what we're talking about with improved digital processes. So, what are we trying to do in these strategic objectives? First off, we do need to generate digital content. So that means having the ability to generate digital content, having the right cameras, the sound equipment, studio equipment to be able to do that, to be able to broadcast and to do that on a regular content. Then having this people and skills to be able to put together what is interesting on digital. So there are other things like putting titles on things and making sure that we have content that's compelling and interesting. The second strategic objective is better software solutions. So we've improved the business systems that we've had here in Nordic Northwest, and I hope you've seen that. Improve the staff's digital capabilities is sort of the third pillar of this. You need to know what you're doing, and being able to train staff and get them up to speed on what they're doing, the volunteers as well, is important to what we're doing. Empower staff and volunteers to work both remotely and on campus. This was really a requirement as part of COVID to be able to work from wherever you are and put that in place. Preferences and analytics with permission. I mean, I think a lot of us will really worry about tracking everything to a little detail, but a lot of us like to know is, what are the Swedish events that are happening, or what are good events for kids? I really want to hear about this, that, and being able to have some level of stating what your preferences are is important. Automate processes. Right now we used to have to go out to get to payments, now it comes back in. And develop a digital roadmap. So what should we do when? Accomplishments. If you look up there, there's a little QR code. Take a picture of it. It'll take you to the Nordic Northwest website. But we have tools. Video, sound equipment, conferencing equipment have all been purchased. We still have a roadmap to get more, but I think we're miles ahead of where we were 2 years ago, where we are now, and I hope you all see that. We've improved our business systems, our payment systems, our membership and collaboration systems have all been put in place to improve, and we'll continue to do that. Remote work has been enabled. We've been able to hold virtual events, and we have improved online communications in both social media and with newsletters and things like that. We are doing data analytics in terms of who's visiting our web and doing surveys of events like this, so we look at analytics. But one of the things I would like to talk about is we live in one of the high-tech hubs of the world here in Portland. We have a lot of members who have expertise in what we're doing. So one of the things I would very much like to launch is a digital advisory panel to help guide Nordic Northwest through a lot of these decisions about what piece of software we should do, what's important technologies that we should look at, what are the security concerns, and put that in place. So with that, that is what we've done with the digital strategy. So now I'd like to turn that over. I think marketing and communications, Steve, are you next?
Alrighty, my name is Stephen England. I'm a co-chair along with Greg Jacobs for the Communications, Marketing, and Branding Task Force. And our three members are Osa, Christy, and Sarah, and Annetta was our staff liaison. And as you can imagine, we work pretty closely with Peter's group because so much marketing these days is digital, and so much digital work is marketing. I just wanted to take a second to break down what the three elements of our title are. You could think of communication kind of the vessel as what you're marketing. Marketing is sort of the content, and branding is sort of how we present ourselves as Nordic Northwest. So communication plays a major role on how successful organizations reach where they are by effectively using signs and symbols. So it is essentially, like I said, the vessel of how we promote ideas. Marketing focuses on enhancing the relationship between the organization and its members by telling a story. And this is sort of the content, the meat and potatoes, if you will, of CMB. Branding, this is one of my favorite, but it's kind of the nerdiest and least talked about. This is how we present ourselves. This is things like our logo, what color blue the logo is, when should it be used, when should it not be used. In fact, when all of us 5 task forces did our initial PowerPoints, they all look totally different. We all use different shades of blue. One of the things that you're supposed to consider with branding is, hey, say, everybody needs to use the Nordic Northwest blue, which I believe is Curiosity Blue or something like that. And there's a specific title for it. And it sort of starts to create this a lot more patched together group. You can see on the image over there is multi-channel marketing, and that's basically all the different forms of marketing, which we do a little bit of each right now. We, as a task force, have 5 suggested objectives. The first is that we want to complete a marketing audit, and in this marketing audit, we would essentially take a look at all of the past campaigns that Nordic Northwest has done, how well they worked, how many opens did we have for a specific email, what could we do better to get more opens, how many clicks did we have, how many conversions did we have. From that marketing audit, then we can then move forward and say, okay, we now know the best practices, what works, what doesn't work. Let's see how we can move forward. Objective 2 is we want to identify and evaluate communication channels. So we want to sort of look at that graphic on the right and say, are we doing social media? What are we doing right now? What are we doing in our physical space? What are we doing for catalog, aka print, direct mail, print? What are we doing for radio ads? Do we have a TV ad? That sort of thing. So we wanted to use that audit as an opportunity to make a gigantic list of all the different ways we're marketing Nordic Northwest to the public. Objective 3, we'd like to utilize a more data-focused surveys on event attendance. So every single time you register an event, we would love to collect a little bit more optional data and say, Who are you? How did you hear about us? Why are you coming here? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Nothing would be required. Nothing would be super intrusive. We all know that we get enough of that on the internet nowadays, but we wanted to sort of use that opportunity to collect a little bit more data. And I'm a big data nerd. The more data you have, the better you can market to a specific crowd. And that starts by collecting that data. Our fourth objective is we'd like to create a style guide for Nordic Northwest, as well as our sub-brands. So things like Broder, things like Finwear. We do have a style guide now, and essentially what that is it talks about things, like I mentioned in branding, talks about Curiosity Blue, what size the N logo should be. It basically says, okay, Peter, you're going to hold an event. Here's our style guide, and this will tell you how to present all of the information and how we want it presented. Things like the font. This is actually Futura font, which is one of our official Nordic Northwest fonts, which everybody just got a wrinkle on their brain because probably nobody knew that because you don't talk about those things. If it looks familiar, I just realized today that I think it is because IKEA uses the same font. Our fifth objective, going back to the style guide. We do have a style guide now, but we were talked about elaborating that, making it more accessible, posting on the internet potentially for people who host events, and then the sub-brands as well. So saying, this is the Nordic Northwest logo, this is a Broder logo. They're two separate things. And that leads us into the fifth objective, is we'd like to launch a campaign that would essentially say, Nordia House is different than Broder. Broder is different than Nordia House. Nordia House is different than Nordic Northwest. In this giant campaign, we sort of separate the people, the place, and the things you can do there. We don't want people to say, I'll meet you at Broder. We want them to say, I'll meet you at Nordia House, where we can go to Broder and meet people from Nordic Northwest. And that's essentially what the campaign is meant to sort out. So those are our 5 suggested objectives, and I'm going to turn it over to Joanna.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Norwegian Danish, and I've discovered to my shock also part Swedish. So I first want to give thanks to the people who worked on this. We probably had the largest committee. We had 2 groups. One was a task force that really looked at what is the strategic framework we should be thinking from. And then we had a working group, and you can see it comes from all different organizations. And the goal is, what could that look like? What should we be trying out to see how we can grow our community together? So our group had our task, and our task was to build a framework for cooperation and collaboration between Nordic Northwest and Nordic-related organizations, regionally and beyond. And we recognize that we're just taking the baby steps. We're beginning the process. This is many years of growing together. We feel strongly that our community organizations are a critical element of Nordic Northwest and a critical element of our future. In fact, Peter likes to point out we're growing the DNA of collaboration together. We thought about what collaboration means in this context, and we defined it as an ongoing relationship between independent organizations that allows us all to seek our mission, our goals, and outcomes that benefit everybody. The task force set up the recommendations, the strategic objectives that we want to move forward with. And they are pretty simple: to build and maintain contacts with our regional organization, to become a trusted source of information, to have partners and key partners that we can grow our collaboration with over time, and to enhance programming for us, but also for other organizations. To develop a sustainable forum for communication where we can share what we learn and our challenges and so on. And we were given a charge that moved to the work group. And that charge was, how could this look? What should we be testing or trialing to get us moving down this path? Well, of course, it was the middle of COVID. So here we are, and we have accomplishments that happened regardless of being in COVID. And the first is a directory. And that directory will be online. We updated it. We found all the Nordic organizations we could find, Nordic-related organizations, so we can find each other and figure out who's in charge, how to connect with each other. The second one I'm going to point out is actually the calendar initiative. And if you have questions about this, talk to Peter, because this is new software. And you can see, there's a URL for it. You can go visit. This is astounding software that allows us to share with each other events that are happening. And for the organizations who become part of this adventure, it provides a lot of other opportunities, how to remind your members, how to open up events to a broader audience, how to make sure that we don't schedule things on the same day. So we're looking for organizations who want to be part of it. We already have a couple who are going to be testing it. And that group together will work and test it over 6 to 8 months and be the user group that refines it, makes it work, answers the challenges. We also developed a key partners strategy. That strategy says some organizations already work so often with Nordic Northwest, use a building, do other things, that we should have some sort of advantages for those groups where we're collaborating more frequently and more deeply and share deep missions. So we're going to trial things like special rental agreements, special access to spaces before other groups, maybe sharing back and forth, board to board. What's going on? What are the challenges? What matters to you? Get to know each other more deeply and grow together. And finally, we're building our community, because community and the members and all of us need places where we can get together and know each other. Coob is a good example. They already are way ahead in building community. And also the Nordic Knitters. If you're a knitter, Tuesday, 12:30, third Tuesday of every month, please come join us. And we're about to enter into figuring out how we can have just come in and have a cup of coffee and visit with each other. Don't know what that's going to look like yet. And everything we do is trying it out over the next 6 to 8 months to see what really works the best. Because the bottom line for this group is we're going to grow our community, we're going to help each other, so we all have the Nordic community and organization strength that we want for the future. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. In my day job, I serve as OHSU's Chief Nursing Executive, and in full disclosure, I'm mostly Icelandic. And I'm just starting my 3rd year on the board of Nordic Northwest and proudly serve as the chair of the Development Committee, and was actually really happy to co-chair the Nordic Northwest Campus Planning Task Force along with Wynne Peterson-Nedry. Other members of our committee were Bob Evanson, Ross Fogelquist, and Eric Taxer, and we were very pleased to have an advisory group made up of Scott Burns, Carl and Marianne Thompson, Hans Solstrom, and Nils Jensen. The background and purpose of the work that we were charged with was to really look at what it would take to further Nordic Northwest's capacity to serve its members and its community in order to enhance our relationships with other cultural and social organizations, increase local, state, national, and international visitors, provide opportunities for education and enrichment, and to create space for interaction promoting Nordic values and heritage. And all of those things were to be done within the context of the campus site here. One caveat that we got from the board was that as much as possible as we were looking at this work, we should be thinking about campus improvements and expansion that could be funded by donors, contributions, and grants. So our goals were really to launch the next phase of the comprehensive Nordic campus without incurring debt by using privately raised funds and to, as determined by the board, really to launch the approved phases of the comprehensive Nordic campus plan without incurring any debt. We actually came up with and have 7 recommendations that we made to the board when we presented in May. The first one was regulatory. So as you know, we sit on a large and beautiful piece of property here in Washington County, and in order to do things on this property, we need permission from the regulators of it. And so we recommended that we submit preliminary plans for a Nordic pavilion to Washington County for their response and input. We also know that if we're going to make improvements to the parking lot, we need approval for that. So what that would take in terms of regulatory approval. The other thing that we were very interested in exploring was how we might enhance existing wetlands and make them into interpretive trails. And finally, what would it take to acquire property that is adjacent to Nordic Northwest if we were interested in that property for development for things such as increased parking? There were a number of things that we explored and discussed through the course of our task force meetings, and we have a fabulous facilities committee here at Nordic Northwest, and we turned back to them some of the things that we had discussion about, such as installing the Great Hall space divider with a movable wall, which we have and are moving forward with. The ideas about, with approval from Washington County, paving the existing gravel parking lot fell back to the facilities committee. And then also thought that there was an opportunity to revitalize the paver project through more active marketing, and we will turn to Greg's group for some help with that. In terms of storage, when we were doing our fact finding, we learned that we store things all over the place and in all kinds of facilities, and there are many different types of things that we store. And we really felt that it was important, and I understand this work has already started, to identify existing and long-term storage needs. We've got things that need archival type of storage. We've got things that need to be pulled out when we have an event. We have regulatory requirements about access to some of our storage facilities, including ADA accessibility and OSHA safety requirements. We also knew that in order to explore this, we would have to consider insurance implications for the things that were stored therein. And then, is there a way for us to start thinking about using technology to reduce space needs by archiving things using virtual space? We also recognized that there was going to be an opportunity for us to continue the assessment for the space needs that our members have, and that ongoing assessments really needed to determine what kind of meeting space, studio activity needs, and other types of space needs there were, including such things as the Nordic Pavilion and the existing Hansen House and Fogelbo garage. And of course, Fogelbull, a big and central piece of our campus. And our recommendation to the board was to really envision Fogelbull as a heritage house center where we could conduct docented tours, featured exhibits, lectures, and social functions. And in order to do that, we would need to conduct an architectural assessment, do some regulatory review, and create a pro forma to determine the needed renovations and associated costs. We also recognize that it is a tremendous inventory of historic items of significance for display. And as that is the case, what should be the considerations for things like, and this is actually another thing that has already occurred, and that is the reinstatement of an advisory committee to help guide and direct the activities that occur at Fogelbull. And last but not least, our outdoor space. It really is a beautiful space out there. It does, however, need work. And we thought that with a plan, wetland functionality and enhancement with interpretive trails was something that would be really amenable to grant funding, either at the city or state or even national level, or could possibly be a named philanthropic opportunity. We also thought there's opportunity to develop things like a play area or an amphitheater. Again, considerations there would be equipment cost, maintenance, and liability. Again, it is an opportunity that would be amenable to grant funding and or a named philanthropy. And then last but not least, provide outdoor heated covered seating off the Great Hall and Broder. And that was one of the recommendations that came upon having lived through and understanding the different needs that we may have for social distancing and space in light of the pandemic. And that is the recommendations from the Campus Site Planning Task Force, and I will turn it over to our financial strategic plan, Anton.
Hi there, I'm Anton Akervall, and I'm a board member also on the Finance Committee. And I had the pleasure and privilege to serve with Mike as a co-chair for the Finance Stability Task Force, and we have Hans, I see him back there, and Nils participated as well. My day job is as a director and a treasury manager for Bank of America, so I spend a lot of time thinking about money, sadly enough, other people's money. So the Financial Stability Task Force is created to put Nordic Northwest on a stable financial future. And how do we do that? Well, we think about it in two different ways. We're going to have projects that are small, they don't have a lot of cost impact, they don't require any staff support. All of those type of projects will say you're exempt from any of our analysis that we're going to do for you. But if you're not, if you have a lot of income or cost potential, if you're going to require a lot of staff support, or just bring a significant cost, we have created a cost-benefit analysis of sorts, where we're quantifying the benefits and the cost associated with the program or what we're trying to do. And I just provided a little snapshot how that would look like. So we're looking at the cost, the benefits, and over a time period. And we tried to make it fairly comprehensive, so we've included things like, cost of capital or alternative cost. I mean, money isn't free, right? So we're trying to, provide some numbers around those things. So that's all. I have the model in our breakout sessions, so if anyone has more questions, please come and see me and we can dive into that more. And I think it's back to you, John.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you, all task force speakers. Lots of energy in the room. What you just heard was in about a half hour. Was almost 20 months worth of work, so it's been highly compressed. But thanks to Stephen and the slides, you helped us communicate this. I hope you agree in the audience. There's a lot of energy in this group. Now it's time to break up into the task forces, so each of you can choose which task force you'd like to join in. We have about 45 minutes remaining, so I would ask the task force to take about no more than 25 minutes. Then when we return to this room, I'd like you to tell the audience about the top idea or the priority, or some way encapsulate the critical point that came out of that conversation with the folks that attended that group. That'll take a few minutes, and then we'll wrap things up. Scandinavians love to visit. That's wonderful. Thank you all. Well, I hope you had a spirited conversation. A couple of the task forces had a large attendance. Collaboration and Nordic campus were well populated. So at this point, Jody has a microphone. So what we asked for was the spokesperson for each task force give us just a capsule summary, the key point that was made, if you could share that with the group.
We reaffirmed how important getting this calendar, this shared calendar, up and running so we know about each other's events. As I said, see Peter, we have a list. We reaffirmed coffee hour. We don't quite yet know what that will look like, but everybody likes the idea and thinks it's critical for sort of community building. Of course, there was a lot of interest in a wine and beer hour as well. The Nordic Directory, Pirio reminds us to remind you that it exists, connect, use it to get to know each other. And there also was interest in going beyond that. And so back to the working group will go the idea of what would a Nordic Council look like? Besides sharing on the calendar, how could we share more deeply about what the challenges are, how we might fill each other's gaps, how we can help each other and grow our community? So I want to thank our group. It was a lot in a very small time, and we just appreciate it so much.
Okay, we had kind of one common theme, and that was about defining some things and narrowing scope and saying we're doing some good marketing for what we are currently exhibiting, what we're showing kind of to current members. One thing we need to work on is how to use marketing to get new members, and how we can really use digital marketing specifically to get new members, how we can do in-person marketing to get new members. We had some small ideas, things like adding a slogan, possibly a permanent slogan or a one-year slogan to Nordic Northwest to further define it. That word definition is really key because we have all these concepts, but the public might not know what they are. And that's the whole point of marketing, is you want to define something and sort of pitch something. So in order to pitch Nordic Northwest, we could say Nordic Northwest, it's people. It's sort of like we use the example of Fred Meyer, what's on your list today. They have a rotating tagline or something like that, kept for 1 year or 3 years, or like Nike's is just do it. They keep that kind of permanently. So maybe adding something like that. So just narrowing scope, learning how to use marketing to not only promote the good things we're doing, but get new people in the door.
Really, this was a lot of talk about the content of what we're doing in the digital exhibits, realizing that our reach is now much greater. How do we get more speakers from the Nordic areas to speak? There was the example we were doing was specifically around crafts and how do we show craftsmen doing work and things like that, but not just the people here, but we can now technically have a speaker from anywhere in the world. We just did that with the wonderful talk on lobsters in Sweden, but more examples of using our digital capabilities to provide more content was the main focus area of the discussion we had today.
I think the main thing that roused people's curiosity was the idea about a campus pavilion and really what that would include and what it would look like, and the need to actually survey the community to determine what the needs are. I think we were happy to hear that from the regulatory aspect, it seems that Nordia House has been a good addition to Washington County, and so they're generally favorable about what has happened on the property. And so we think that is a good thing. The one concern was that we continue to have unhappy neighbors when we are having large events and there is parking in their neighborhood. So how to contend with those issues would be obviously a concern. The other thing that was a main point of conversation relative to some kind of an additional property on the property was the idea of collaboration with other groups and what it would look like to gain their support for how we might continue with development here at Nordic Northwest and Nordia House. Last thing that was discussed really had to do with the Fogle Bowl and the need for handicap access, and that is one of the things that we discussed on the task force, is that there needs to be an assessment of that and what it would look like to become compliant with regulatory requirements for having the public accessing the building in a way that was accessible to all. So I think we've got some good next steps relative to where we need to have our focus, and I really appreciate everybody coming together to help to drive the next bit of work that we're going to be doing.
Well, I'm in the Finance Committee, and we have to look at cost benefit. We have to see, is it feasible? When you get into some of your larger projects, I mean, it could be $2 million. I mean, are we going to get that much in donations to help fund it? Do we have to use current operating funds? Does it make sense? And that's what we're charged with. And then we report back to the board. And of course, the board would make the final decision. We would just be part of that input. Our time was spent really kind of educating what we do and how our finances are. And somebody's got to say no, but we like to say yes, I think, more than no. But we're in a good spot financially, best we've ever been. And we kind of want to keep it that way, but still let room for growth and project, things that help the members like. And so I think we finished on a high note. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'll give it to John Nelson to wrap us up.
I had a moment to visit with Priscilla Blamel, if she's still here. There she is. One of the building blocks of this organization, and the takeaway from that, some of what we're talking about is a bit repetitive. Back then in the day, as I say, there was talk about building and expanding and growing the membership to 2,000 members. I think we're about 1,000 right now. The lesson to me is stay humble, don't overpromise. But always look forward. And I think it's evident today, I hope you see the energy level from the task force membership and from the board members, and I certainly feel it from you folks in the audience, that there is an energy level and there's a desire to move forward, to improve what we do, to be better, to serve the membership more effectively, and always be looking over the horizon to what's possible. So I thank you for that, and I thank all of my fellow board members. We have, both individually and collectively, an absolutely remarkable board. These are incredible people with talents and skills that they volunteer and bring to the table in their committee meetings and the board meetings and their individual work and effort. And I thank our staff, particularly Jody. In 3 years, we've come a long way as an organization. So we're definitely on the right track. We need to complete the strategic plan. The board will be meeting in retreat November 20th, and after that, we'll take the steps necessary to incorporate everything we've heard and to eventually publish a plan for the membership. How that looks, how that takes place, the schedule for that, we'll communicate that with you. We don't know yet. We've got to talk as a board first. We have one more meeting tonight, so thank you for being our experimental dry run participants. Yeah, maybe we'll get good at this and tonight will be smoother, who knows. But thank you very much. We'll end this now. I hope you found this to be useful today. I know you have a scarce amount of time in your life, so thank you very, very much for attending, and we appreciate everything you do for Nordic Northwest.